My ex-husband demanded half my inheritance in our divorce. The lawyer couldn't stop smiling. When my grandmother passed last year, she left me her house. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood that she'd lived in for 40 years. My husband Rick was thrilled. He immediately started talking about selling it and using the money for his motorcycle collection. I wanted to keep it in the family. Rick had this thing where everything had to be his idea. When I suggested we could rent it out instead, he rolled his eyes and said I didn't understand money. When I mentioned maybe keeping it for future kids, he laughed and said kids were expensive enough without keeping useless property around. 3 months later, he filed for divorce, out of nowhere. Apparently, he'd been seeing his coworker Jessica for 6 months. The same Jessica who helped plan my birthday party and kept texting me about girl trips we should take together. Rick moved out on a Tuesday. By Friday, his lawyer was already demanding half of everything, including the house I inherited. His argument was that we were married when I got it, so it counted as marital property. I was devastated. That house meant everything to me. My grandmother taught me to bake in that kitchen. I had my first sleepover in the back bedroom. My lawyer, Mrs. Chen, scheduled a meeting to go over Rick's demands. She was this tiny Asian woman who wore huge glasses and spoke really quietly. When she read through Rick's paperwork, she got this weird expression on her face, like she was trying not to laugh. "Your husband wants half the house," she said. "But did you tell him about the condition your grandmother put in her will?" I had no idea what she meant. Mrs. Chen pulled out my grandmother's will and pointed to a paragraph I'd never really read carefully. Apparently, my grandmother was way smarter than any of us realized. The will said I could inherit the house, but only if I was still married to my first husband when she died. If I got divorced within 5 years of inheriting it, the house would go directly to my cousin Jake in California. No exceptions. No splitting it, no selling it. My grandmother had met Rick exactly twice. Both times, he spent the entire visit on his phone or complaining about her old person smell. She clearly saw right through him. Mrs. Chen explained that Rick could demand half the house all he wanted, but legally, the house would disappear from my assets the moment our divorce was finalized. He'd get half of nothing. We decided not to tell him right away. Let him think he was getting this huge payout. Rick's lawyer kept pushing for a quick settlement. Rick was so confident about getting half my inheritance that he even put a deposit down on some expensive motorcycle he'd been wanting. He texted me pictures of it, saying, "Thanks for the bike." The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. Rick showed up in a brand new suit, grinning like he'd already won the lottery. His lawyer had this thick folder of paperwork proving the house should be split 50-50. When the judge asked about the property division, Mrs. Chen stood up and calmly explained the inheritance condition. She handed over my grandmother's will. Rick's face went from confident to confused to absolutely furious in about 10 seconds. "That's not possible," he kept saying. "She can't just take the house away," but she could, and she did. The judge finalized our divorce that day. The moment he signed the papers, I officially lost the house to my cousin Jake. Rick got half of my car, half our savings account, and half the furniture. Total value, about $8,000. Rick's lawyer tried to argue that my grandmother's will was unfair or manipulative, but there was nothing legally wrong with it. Rich people do stuff like this all the time to protect family property. After the hearing, Rick cornered me in the parking lot. He was screaming about how I'd tricked him and stolen his money. I told him the truth. I had no idea about the condition either. My grandmother played all of us. The best part was finding out later that Rick couldn't return his expensive motorcycle. He'd already signed all the paperwork and the dealer wouldn't take it back. So he was stuck with this bike he couldn't afford, while Jessica was pressuring him to help pay her rent. Last I heard, Rick was working double shifts to cover his payments, and Jessica had started dating someone else. Meanwhile, cousin Jake sold the house and split the money with me anyway, since I was the one grandmother really wanted to have it.